psychedelics are becoming part of the mainstream therapeutic process. We have across the globe psychedelic assisted therapies, MDMA, ketamine. You can go pretty much anywhere, almost every country in the world, and get access to ayahuasca, peyote, mushrooms, cannabis, all kinds of once illegal, but still in some cases very illegal substances, and get guided through a process of healing. And if you don't really understand how your ADHD nervous system works in relationship to these substances, you might go in for healing and come out a complete wreck. Now, I'm going to tell you from my own personal experience that there are many beautiful benefits to working with psychedelics, plant medicines, these healing substances. And there's also a lot of risks. How do I know that? Because I ended up upside down in a car on the side of the highway in Mexico after a peyote ceremony in the desert because my shaman had fallen asleep at the wheel and flipped the car. So I had to deal with the police. I had to throw substances out into the desert because I wasn't careful. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was chasing a high. And so today I want to help you to understand why psychedelics, though supportive, also need a big dose of care, precaution, and really tuning into whether or not this is the right thing for you. My name is Christopher Armstrong, and right now I am enjoying the last little bit of light here in Sokhna. This is maybe just an hour or two outside of Cairo in Egypt on the Red Sea. And I felt called to share with you a little bit about my experience with psychedelics. Now, look, I didn't know when I first started getting into psychedelics that I had an ADHD nervous system, but I was highly drawn to them. And there are really important reasons for that, why you too might be drawn to these substances because of the way our nervous system works. And so today I'm going to help you to understand why it is that we're so drawn to them, why it is that they're so risky, and what some of the benefits and some of the risks are. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about why you might be interested in these substances. And look, I am not giving you advice and telling you to say, hey, go and do it or not do it. I'm just giving you some information so you can make that decision on your own. I am not here to recommend, to prescribe any of these things. Use your own judgment and your own intuition. Do the research for your own self because, look, the legality of even some of these substances is really in a gray area in a lot of places. So I need you to just listen and tune into your own inner guidance. Now, look, why is ADHD so drawn to psychedelics? Number one, because we love intensity. We're drawn to the intensity, to the highs that we can get in the psychedelic experience. We have a lower baseline dopamine level, which means that we are always craving stimulation. Now, you know this because you probably were swiping on your phone and you found this live video. Maybe you're looking at me here going, oh, I don't even know how I got here, but you were chasing dopamine. Maybe you're snacking on something. Maybe you do a lot of doom scrolling or even do your own smoking, cigarettes, alcohol, whatever, and you chase those highs, but that's because we have a low baseline level of dopamine. So the idea of healing, the idea of improving our life by getting high is extremely appealing to the ADHD nervous system. Now, the other part about it is that the ADHD nervous system seems to, and this is from my experience with my clients and my own self, we love trying something that's a little bit risky, something that's a little bit uncommon. We like to kind of like bend the rules. We like to explore. We like to try new things. This whole novelty, this something that's interesting is fantastic because look, if I had two choices, one, to sit down with a therapist every week for the next 20 or 30 years, or to go into the jungle and sip on some ancient brew so that I could dive deep into my shadow and trip on some interesting substances. Clearly I'm going to choose the jungle option. That's just way more interesting, right? Modern conventional therapy, let's say cognitive behavioral therapy, and I agree with you, it does suck, but there's a lot of better options, but I'll talk about that later. Okay, so we might be drawn to it because it's interesting, it's risky, it's dynamic, it's something different. But there's other reasons why it's appealing for us as well. And I would say the biggest thing is because we have this hunter-gatherer nervous system. There's evidence that's come out that says that genetically we have a more ancient, older kind of tribal nomadic nervous system, one that frankly hasn't evolved to keep up with this weird, chaotic world that we live in. And so we're drawn and interested in things that resonate with our ancient biology, neurobiology, our ancient genetics, which is like small, tribal, kind of traditional, ritualistic, ceremonial types of experiences. Now, no wonder that a lot of these ancient civilizations are generally smaller cultures, nomadic, kind of small tribal cultures, and they use these methods, these ancient healing techniques to help the people in their community, and it taps into something that's very ancient and very deep within us. And by the way, if you've had experience with some of this stuff, I would go ahead and drop in a comment and let me know what you have had experience with, whether it was good for you or not, whether you would go back and do it again. So let's talk about some of the pros about why it is that we would benefit from these types of substances. Number one, these substances are great at getting into the neurobiology and giving us a chance to detach and disconnect what's called the default mode network, the DMN, or the default mode network, which is like, just think about it, when you boot up your computer or your phone, it's the programs and all the stuff that's happening behind the scene to keep the phone functioning. We have this in our brain. You could call it your ego, you could call it your baseline mental programming, but it's the thing that keeps you when you're just running on your day-to-day settings, okay? But this gets switched off. This gets turned off when you use a psychedelic substance, and it allows the body and the mind to rewire. Because when that's out of place, we can have, number one, a tremendous perspective around ourselves. We can see ourselves from different perspectives. We can see things that we just were unable to see from another normal, sober state. And then we actually have the ability to rewire, because there's science that shows now that our neurobiology, our actual neural networks, will stay in a flexible, more programmable state, a neuroplastic or a changeable state for weeks after a ceremony. So we actually can use this ceremony, this substance, whatever it is, however you do it, the safe and most law-abiding version that you can do it, even though I'm sure you would love to break some rules, is to make sure that you actually can use those weeks afterwards to continue the process, to integrate and to rewire. So we can actually use those several weeks afterwards to take the clarity that we've had and combine that with things like therapy, somatic therapy techniques, to actually reprogram our body and our mind. Because look, if your phone is struggling, you have too much stuff saved on it, you have too many apps, it's not doing what you want it to do, you need to get in there and you need to clean out the software. And psychedelics allow us to do that. Now, I would say another big benefit is that a lot of people with ADHD have a lot of questions, like why? Why is this happening, and how can I shift and change? And psychedelics help us to get into that higher level perspective. We can see almost from the more 10,000 foot view. We can zoom out and we can see our lives from a different perspective, but we also can get in connection with God, source, energy, the creator, the creative programmer, the architect of the matrix, whatever you want to call it. And so having access to that is so appealing, because the day-to-day with ADHD kind of sucks. Like, this world is not made for us. It's loud, chaotic, it's noisy, it's structured in a way that doesn't honor our neurobiology. And so it's really nice to be able to see from that more spiritual perspective. Now, I love this too, because whenever I've done these ceremonies or these healing processes, generally speaking, I do them in group settings. And that more reflects that idea that, I mean, it's a tribal, it's a group collective process. And it hits the idea that I want to connect with people. I want to connect with people, and I want to do it in a live, immersive, multi-sensory experience, which is super important for me, because with the ADHD nervous system, like, we have to have all of our senses involved. Otherwise, it just isn't going to keep our intention, and it's not going to be as effective for us as we would like. But let's talk about the negatives. Let's talk about the negative sides of psychedelics and ADHD. Number one, man, we are so more highly likely to addict to a substance. Now, I understand that most psychedelics, or theoretically all psychedelics, are not habit forming in the sense that they do not create such an impact on the physical body, on the neurology, on the chemistry that causes a dependency. But, and we can absolutely get addicted to the high. Why does this happen? Because our novelty seeking, our dopamine seeking gets the high. We have the experience. It's intense, but then guess what? Life, nature loves balance. We come crashing down. We come back into reality. And by the way, sometimes after we see reality, after seeing the, oh my God, beautiful, spiritual, from that higher multidimensional perspective, it's really hard to go back to real life, or what we call real life, this dimension, because we start to feel the pain of the contrast, because we and feel, I don't know, potentially being of God. And then all of a sudden, now we have to go and deal with like paying our taxes, or just like brushing my teeth and taking a shower. So that shift back into quote unquote reality can be very, very difficult for people. And that's why oftentimes we seek the high once again, right? So the big danger is just going back and going back and going back. I sat with ayahuasca twice. I have smoked 5-MeO DMT over 70 times, maybe. I kind of lost count. I have used mushrooms dozens of times, cannabis countless times, a lot of times in the name of healing. But if we don't integrate properly, if we don't honor the return back to normal reality, then we can very well get stuck in a trapped cycle of looping and addicted and stuck with that craving and chasing the high. So the addiction part is definitely the biggest and most important thing, but there's other stuff as well. And I will say, really, it comes down to the idea that many times we do not utilize, and please forgive me, I've got to move to a place with a little bit more light. Many times we forget to set ourselves up with that integration process. We think that we're going to do all of the work and get all of the magic and fix all of the things in the ceremony, in the high. But I will tell you that when it comes to the psychedelic, 90% of the work, I'd say, let's just put it this way, I'd say 20% of the work is the preparation, the mindset, the preparation, finding the right person, the right ceremony, the right medicine, the right fitting. I'd say the work is going to be in the actual ceremony itself, the actual, substance itself. I would say that the other 60% is all going to happen in the process after the ceremony. Once you have landed, right? Once you've landed the plane, you need to integrate. And again, part of that has to do with the fact that your neurobiology, your neuroplasticity is so high that you can start to change. You need to take the visions, the clarity, the things that you witnessed, saw, and maybe reprogrammed in that psychedelic state, and you need to do something with it, right? Vision is beautiful. We do really well with the ADHD mind at visionary mindset, seeing how things aren't working and seeing maybe we have ideas for something bigger and better. But our problem is in execution, right? Our problem is executive function. Our problem is in dopamine. Our problem is doing the things consistently. And if you're going to go and get the vision and get the high and have the seeds for a new vision, the vision for a new life, the seeds don't do anything if they're not planted in soil, and I mean fertile soil. So those visions, those ideas, the stuff that you blasted off and got to see in the multidimensional space needs to be brought back into this earth, planted in soil and tended to, watered daily. And that's where new habit formation is really helpful. That is where new mindset and new thoughts and new neural processes is so incredibly helpful. But that's not something that you're going to do in the ceremony. That's something you do for the days, weeks, and months afterwards. So look, there are a lot of risks, right? There is also the idea that, and theoretically, there's a possibility that people have, and maybe ADHD has a higher chance with this, of issues with psychedelic states triggering types of psychoses and potentially schizophrenia. I don't have a lot of research on this, but I will tell you that after an ayahuasca experience in Guatemala, and then a subsequent party at a friend's house with LSD. I ended up in a state of psychedelic-induced psychosis for a matter of probably 6 months. It was really challenging for me because I didn't know what reality really was. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was lost, confused, stuck. And what did I do back then? Well, because I didn't know about my ADHD nervous system, I kept chasing the high. I kept chasing the high over and over and over again. I went to another ceremony, and that took me to Peyote country in San Luis Potosi in Mexico. And I went out with a friend who I thought was a very qualified shaman, but he really wasn't. And we ended up harvesting peyote. I had a beautiful experience, but the next day he was driving my rental car and he fell asleep and he flipped the car. I ended up upside down on the side of a road in Mexico. He was bleeding out. I had to put a tourniquet on him. I had a bunch of substances in the car, some peyote plants that I had to throw out, unfortunately, into the desert, but I needed to make sure that I wasn't going to federal prison in Mexico, right? I wasn't listening to my intuition. I was chasing a high and I was trusting somebody who was not trustworthy. I was doing the wild, risky thing because my ADHD nervous system is so used to that I did not take the proper precautions. Now, look, I learned a lot from that, but I could have died very, very easily. Was it exactly the psychedelics' fault? No. But the ADHD nervous system, the novelty seeking, the risk taking, the risk tolerance, some of those things that can be great gifts for us, ended up causing some serious problems for me. Now, if I were you, what I would do if you're feeling called to use any of these substances is, number one, make sure that you're actually feeling called and you're not just chasing some intensity. I have a rule. Psychedelic substances are very magical. They have a spirit, they have an energy, and I will tell you that if they want to work with you, they will find you. You will dream about it, you will see synchronistic events, you will see things pop up in your reality, and you will see, without a doubt, that that's time for you. I was going to work with a plant called yopo. It's a seed from Costa Rica. They grind it up, they soak it in lye, and then they shoot it in a powder up into your nose, and then you trip hard for about 45 minutes. If you take an MAO inhibitor, it can go for much longer. But look, a friend told me about it because he was a practitioner and he'd been using this substance. He'd been serving it. He learned how to do that when he was in the jungle. Now, I thought, oh, that's cool. That sounds interesting, but it sounds horribly uncomfortable. So I did this. I said, I'm going to wait for 3 clear signs that this substance is calling me. And then within a week, I had 3 vivid, clear, in my reality signs. Now you can do this. You can play with your reality. You can ask for clarity on these things and you can get clarity. But you need patience. And guess what? For ADHD, that's a little challenging. But if you ask for that clarity, it will come if it's time. And you need to trust that if it doesn't come, it's not the moment. Trust, I know, can be a little difficult when we have such a traumatized nervous system that has thousands and thousands of more micro traumas over the course of a lifetime, because we don't really fit into this society. But I promise you, if you ask for it, it will show you. Now, the other thing I'm going to recommend is go to a place or a person or a group that's reputable, right? That has not only a focus on the set and the setting, which is where it's at and how you are going into it. So that's the ceremony and the prep for the ceremony, but also the integration. You need 100% need a proper integration plan. And I don't mean just like, hey, we've got one Zoom call the week after a ceremony and everyone's going to be chill, or we've got our WhatsApp group or our Telegram group and we're going to share some of our experiences afterward and eventually it's going to fade. Like, this is not enough. You need structured, guided practices, somatic techniques, highly recommended, but something that tells you, says, hey, look, you died in this ceremony. Your ego died. Your default mode network shut down. And you got to see a higher vision of yourself. Now, let's take that and use that to reshape your neural networks. Let's use that to go into this new chapter, to build something better for yourself. But remember, it takes time. It takes time. Psychedelics are great because they bend and distort our understanding of time, but you need to integrate properly, right? Now, I could go on for a long time talking about this topic, and I'm really grateful that you're all here. But what I want you to understand is that psychedelics are very powerful. They deserve respect, but so do you. Your nervous system deserves respect. Your body deserves respect. And I have disrespected myself so many times, putting myself in danger, chasing the high. So I just want you to understand that you deserve respect, the substances deserve respect, and so take your time, slow down. And if you're interested in more information about ADHD and how you can learn how to honor your nervous system, honor your mind, honor your path here as a human in this wacky world that you know as well as I do that it's changing and it needs people like us, visionaries, rhythm running people who function on a different wavelength, people who are here to have the visions and the insights, people who are here to be inventors and creators and change makers like you and me, like us with this nervous system. You're here for that, which means stick with the channel because I've got some programs coming out soon that are going to help you to actually do this process, but without the psychedelics. Because you are the psychedelic, you are the substance. All of the chemicals that you need for any type of transformation exists inside of you. But if you don't know how to access them, if you don't have a path to follow, it's difficult, I know. So look, follow, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you're in tune because there will be more options for different ways to heal, different ways to transform coming up. And in the meantime, let's just have fun conversations about ADHD because it can be easy to get really serious about this stuff because it can hurt sometimes. So for next time, until the next time, I want you to just, love yourself, respect yourself. And if you're going to use any of these substances, remember, slow down. Slow down because you deserve it and the substance deserves it too. Until next time.